Right. So my name is Cassie. I am an assistant director in career planning and development here at Webster. And today we're going to be talking about how to gain experience in the US. If you're new to the US, if you're not able to find a job right away, what can you do to build your experience, add to your resume, that kind of thing. So we'll be going over that. And we'll have time for questions at the end. So getting started here, um, there are a couple of things to keep in mind when you're trying to build your experience, expand your resume, expand your skills. And one of the things you want to consider is what is the employer perspective on the skills. So, what are the transferable skills that you have from other types of environments that you can take forward with you to future jobs, future employment? So these are those transferable skills like attention to detail, um, leadership, communication skills. Those are all things that you'll pick up along the way, and they could be applicable in any future setting. Then there are those job specific skills that are requested specifically per industry. They can vary by role. These can be computer programming languages, things like that. And so employers understand that not all students are coming in with those job specific skills that they may have utilized before. Those job specific skills are probably coming from the degrees that they're studying rather than prior work experience. And then they understand the value that these transferable skills have from any types of prior experience, whether it's work, involvement, volunteer, things like that. So when you ask employers what are their most, asked for transferable skills, what are the ones they recognize the most or the ones that they're looking for the most? These were their answers. So they're in reverse order of from highest importance to um, kind of lowest preference, if you will. And so these are the ones that those employers are looking for, those transferable skills for students to come in with. So they don't necessarily have to have those job specific skills, but they are looking for people who have these transferable skills that have used these before. So if you're not able to gain employment right away, what are some other ways that you can obtain some of these transferable skills? So we'll talk about that today, but you'll see here that the top ones are problem solving, those could be obtained by working on a group project in class. Again, ability to work with a team. That could be in a group project or in, a student-led organization, a sports team, those types of things. Communication skills are come from a variety of different classes and experiences. Strong work ethic, maybe on campus employment or part of a student organization, a leadership position there, flexibility and adaptability, and it goes on and on there. We also want to take a look at what do employers value most when they're looking at two applicants who are maybe have the same experiences. What are they going to rank as higher preference when comparing to people that have very similar backgrounds? And so the top two, they recognize not everybody can do this, but the top two that they are looking for is having completed an internship within the organization or having completed an internship experience just within the industry. So they do recognize that that has value, but they also recognize that not everyone has the opportunity to do that. So what's next most important to them? The major, the field of study. Are you studying something that's relevant? Are you studying something that's going to prepare you with maybe some more of those job specific skills for that job after graduation? Next, they look at general work experience. So even if you're not working directly in the industry, they value those transferable skills that we've been talking about, and they know that you can carry those from one like location to another. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the next two things that they highly value are having held a leadership position. So something to consider, maybe joining a student organization on campus and volunteering to be a leader for that. or being involved just in general with these extracurricular activities. So student clubs, sports, student government, things like that are those things that are developing those transferable skills, and employers are recognizing that. So keep that in mind. So some ways you can start developing these transferable skills, as we talked about before, can be class projects. So keep track of those major projects, capstones, things that you're working on as evidence of some of that maybe job specific experience. Sometimes people will list relevant coursework on their resume. That project experience can go along with that. Anything where you've done some really heavy research or writing, retain those samples. They may be useful later down the road when an employer wants to know, what your communication style is like. Can you adequately communicate effectively written, convey, a train of thought process? What is your research background like? Those types of things. They recognize that as important as coming from the classroom. Next, you can build skills through personal projects. So beyond the classroom, you can work on personal projects that may be relevant to your industry or your field. Keep track of those. This is another great way to develop your skills. And those can also be things that you list on your resume. They can count as those specific skills or transferable skills. Detail what, where, how you did these projects, so employers have context behind them. LinkedIn Learning is a great place to develop through personal projects or just personal kind of mini classes. And every student at Webster has access to LinkedIn Learning for free. You just have to log in with your student email rather than your personal email to get access to that LinkedIn Learning. And you have that for as long as you're a Webster student. There are great courses you can take on, brush up your skills on Microsoft Excel, or, a variety of different other topics, programs, etc. Other great ways to build those skills, as I've been saying a lot, is getting involved on campus. So if you're not able to, get an on-campus job right away, you're not eligible for CPT yet, getting involved on campus is recognized by employers as building some of those skills and being great experiences. And so one of the ways to do that is to check out the Involved at Webster website, learn about all of the clubs that are available on campus. Some are more career oriented, like the Computer Science Club or the Law Club. Some are identity based, so the Latin American, Hispanic Student Organization, or others are just hobby fun related, like the pickleball club or the cricket club. And something to consider is that employers not only recognize the importance of being involved in these activities, but they also recognize the importance of being a leader. And so if there's a way for you to join the leadership of one of these organizations, or if there is a topic or organization that you would like to create that doesn't exist yet, there's a way to establish a new club via SGA, Student Government Association funding, and then you can be a leader of the topic club of your choosing. So being a part of these clubs is voluntary. You can, volunteer to serve in those leadership roles. It's just a great way to meet other people, further boost your resume and your experience. And so consider that as an option, a way to stay busy. If you're not able to obtain one of those few on-campus jobs, things like that. Other ways to consider being involved are getting involved in the community, volunteer work. There are local groups that post volunteer options on Idealist or United Way. If you are an international student, be sure to check with International Student Services regarding regulations before you commit to volunteering somewhere on a regular basis, just because unpaid work can sometimes count against you and be considered that, work on your visa. So we don't want anything messing up statuses. So if you do start to do something on a regular basis, check with International Student Services before you commit to anything, just to make sure it's not going to mess you up. You can also start building your network. So, connecting with people in your field or industry, connecting with professors, connecting with other students, ways to learn about, jobs that you may be interested in can include informational interviews. So these are some informal interviews where you chat with a professional and ask them about their work, their path that they've taken to get to where they are today, what it may be like to work for a specific company. So you can find these people that are in your industry on LinkedIn or at on-campus events, different ways to connect with employers that way. Job shadowing is an interesting one. If you are able to, maybe let's say you find a mentor that's been willing to do an informational interview, they've been willing to share a little bit about what their life and that field or career has been like, then you may be able to ask them or someone else that you know a little bit better if you may be able to shadow what it would be like to work at that job. And typically, that's like a couple hours to maybe a week length. It's nothing intense, but it just gives you an idea of what it's like to do that type of role. Typically, those job shadowing shouldn't involve you doing any work. You're just there to observe and learn what that industry or that role is like. These are really typically common in industries like education or healthcare, things like that. So job shadowing is a great way to say, hey, what's a day in the life of this type of role like? And to learn a little bit more about it with your kind of network that you've built. Campus events. So we host campus events where employers may attend. Other departments host campus events where employers attend. So those are great ways to connect with people in the industries that you're interested in. Keep an eye on those. There are also a ton of virtual events that are posted to Handshake every day that are hosted directly by employers. Most of them have offices locally, some are more nationally recognized. So those are great ways to connect with people in the industry, build that network, get some face time with recruiters. Attending those events is really great to learn about different opportunities they have, whether fellowships or internships or new student hiring practices, things like that. So definitely check out the event page in Handshake. And then lastly, joining professional or social organizations, the Society of Local Businessmen or, different things like that. There's a whole list of off-campus organizations linked here and also on our connections page. So when you get the materials, you'll be able to check those out. And, they sometimes have events held within those social organizations. Some have special LinkedIn groups they can invite you to be a part of. So great ways to get connected with people in your industry. Other ways to obtain that experience can include work experience. We understand that the student employment on campus is a competitive field. There are a few jobs and a lot of people who want them. So making sure that your application materials are ready to go and the best that they can be can improve your chance of getting one. And all of those student employment positions are posted in Handshake, so they do not hide anywhere else. If they're available, they are on Handshake. There's also a student employment page in the Human Resources Connections section on Webster's Connections. And most of these student employment jobs are focused in customer service or more administrative tasks. Most times you complete an application and then there is an interview process for those opportunities. Again, employers do recognize, even if they're not directly related to the industry, those transferable skills that you're picking up in those customer service related roles or administrative tasks. Something to keep in mind right now is that Webster is actually currently under a hiring freeze that is being evaluated quarterly to see whether or not that will be extended. And so that does impact student employment jobs that are not recognized as the federal work study. So just keep that in mind. If you're not seeing many jobs or any jobs in Handshake right now, that is being reevaluated quarterly. We're hoping that that will be lifted at some point and that those jobs will show back up and available to apply. There are, I will send this page link out so that you have it both in the email and in the chat. But this is that human resources page that just talks about the hiring freeze. And this is a great page to check for any updates that may occur as they go through that hiring freeze. And then once you are eligible for CPT, then internships are a great way to, gain that specific industry-specific, job-specific experience that will be related to your future roles. So when you're getting ready to, begin that CPT process, you can make sure you're eligible with International Student Services and check out their connections page to learn more about the visa regulations. And they have guidance on the full CPT and OPT process and things like that. Make sure that your application materials are US style and competitive before you begin applying. You can work with our office to polish those resumes and get feedback on ways to improve. And you can also meet with our office to learn more about those internship search strategies, what to expect as far as search timelines, things like that. And if you are working on both either CPT or OPT, your work does need to be directly related to your degree program. So if you are studying marketing and someone is asking you to do a sales job, that may not be directly relevant. And so you have to be able to say that the skills that you're learning in the classroom every day will be applied in that internship role as CPT or in your post-graduation role as OPT. A couple just quick tips for your application materials. So to differentiate and to define, in the US, we use resumes for most job applications. So that resume should be a summary of your relevant skills and qualifications. And it is typically 2 pages or less, most likely 1 page. Most should not be more than that 1 page. Some can be up to 2 pages if you have significant work experience, but that is typical US style. It's got to be short and to the point because employers don't spend much time reading them, and they want to get all of that relevant information as quickly as possible. A cover letter is a document that accompanies your resume when you apply to a job. And this is a 1-page business style letter that you submit to introduce yourself, express your interest in that organization and that specific position, tell them why you specifically want to work for them, why do you want that position, and a way for you to highlight your strongest qualifications that you also have listed on your resume. This is different. Both of these documents are different from a CV. So CV is more of an internationally known document title, but in the US, it's more specific. It stands for curriculum vitae, and these are more referred for academia positions, research positions, things like that. There isn't a page limit for a CV in the US, but unless you're applying to graduate school, to continuing education, or applying to a fellowship or a role as a faculty member at an institution, a CV is typically not used in the US to apply to jobs. So just to keep that in mind, understand some of that lingo of what some of those job postings may be asking for. When you're formatting your resume, consider that employers are forming their initial impressions within the first 10 seconds of viewing. So they're spending a little bit more time looking at it, but in those first 10 seconds, they're deciding whether it's clear, concise information, it's organized, it's formatted in an easy way to read. They're looking at all of that. So make sure your formatting is consistent, make sure it is easy to skim and read. We recommend avoiding templates altogether. Number one, they're really challenging to edit. And number two, they typically don't adhere to those general resume expectations or norms. They get a little too fancy and complicated, and then the information gets lost. Your margins on your resume can be as small as half an inch to fit more on that one page. Typically shouldn't be any wider than 1 inch. Your main text should be 10 to 12 point size font, so as small as 10 or as large as 12. Your name can be a little bit bigger, but that's typically standard. And then each section should list your experiences from most recent to oldest, so in that reverse chronological order. So your Webster, your current degree should be first before any other degrees. Any more recent experience should be first before those more historical experiences. You want to be explaining things with these bullet points that's starting with a strong past tense action verb. Ideally, your dates are all lining up on this right-hand side. Those types of things to consider. And so, we have many guides and advice on formatting and creating US style resumes on our connections page. So we've linked those here. We also have a sample just to show you here. Once you have kind of a collection of these relevant experiences, you want to consider when you apply to a role, what is most relevant to that specific job posting. So when a job is posted, an employer has made a wish list of the person that they want to fill that position and all of the qualities that are coming with that. They realize they're not going to be able to fulfill 100% of that wish list. They're hoping for maybe 70, 75, 80% of that wish list being fulfilled. So what do you have on that wish list that they're asking for? What experience do you have that is directly relevant? And how are you explaining that? Are you explaining it well? Are you providing context? Are you not asking employers to read between the lines and understand something if you haven't explained it well? You also want to look at what's most recent. That's typically helpful for those transferable skills to highlight. And then what's most unique about you. Your relevant information should be listed first, as I said before, but you can also use specific headers as needed. So if you have, job experience related to the industry, but it's a couple years old, and one of your more recent positions, is more customer service, transferable skill oriented. You can have a relevant experience section on your resume where you highlight those jobs that are most relevant, and then an additional experience section that discusses some of those transferable skills. And these are those transferable skills we've been talking about this whole time. So how do you explain those? Sometimes people will have a skills list. Typically, that's actually not very useful for a transferable skill. Skills lists should be reserved for those technical, tangible skills, like computer software, different information system processings, language skills, things like that. If you just list a soft skill in a list form without any context, an employer is not going to be very happy about that because they're not able to see when or where, how you've used that skill before. So if you want to talk about your organization skills, your leadership skills, your attention to detail, your communication, your ability to work well with others, they work much better as a bullet point under your work experience. So you should be, listing it where you used it. Talk about where, when, and how you did these. So instead of just saying, I have organization skills, organized and tracked inventory to ensure effective use of space and timely reordering of items. That's not much longer, but it's much more specific, and it gives an employer a picture of how you've used that skill before. So here are some other examples: leadership versus leading a team of 15 to do such and such. Communication, well, what kind of communication? How, where, when? Communicated information through members through social media, newsletters, and meeting notes. So these are much stronger with more context and better ways to emphasize those transferable skills we've been talking about today. And when you're writing those bulleted descriptions in your resume, The main goal is to provide context for the reader. You want to start with those strong past tense action verbs. You do away with using any personal pronouns. Those are all assumed in a resume, so you don't need to start anything with I, me, or my. And you want to add quantifiers when possible. And you're asking these questions and addressing them. So what did you do? How did you do it? And why does it matter? So these bullet points here on the left, they're about average. They're not terrible, but there's really not a lot of context behind them. So instead of saying publicized events, how can you make that stronger? Well, this person, updated it to say created social media posts and flyers to increase registration at the annual 5K charity race. It's not that much longer, but it's providing so much more context on how they publicized the events. What type of events were they for? Another great thing to add would be how much did the attendance increase compared to last year as a result piece there. This one is I organized a food drive for disadvantaged families. You don't want that I statement in there. But you do, the organized piece, you're starting out with that past tense action verb. There's a little bit of explanation there, but not a ton. So, how did you organize it? What was the goal of that? And so organized and promoted a food drive resulting in $1,000 worth of goods for families in need. Much more specific, the quantifier in there, it's great. And then instead of taught an art class for children, taught a drawing class of 8 to 12-year-olds with an emphasis on building composition skills. So now I know what type of art, how old the children were, what the emphasis was. Those are better details for a bullet point under either a prior work experience or a project that you've done. And we have this sheet on here if you're, wanting to brainstorm all of the different types of things you can include on a resume that employers might be interested in beyond just that paid work experience. This is that list. So this is included in the handouts that we'll send you, but these are all the types of experiences you can consider including. So, doesn't have to be paid work experience, can be on-campus employment, can be, personal projects or research, study abroad experience, volunteer, involvement on campus, class projects, all of those types of things. Additional things you may wish to include are, objective or summary of your qualifications, and honors or awards section, skills, but remember they should be technical and tangible, certifications, maybe any professional development experiences you've done, whether attending conferences or making presentations, memberships of organizations, and then any relevant coursework. So you don't have to include all of those because you only have one page, but those are things that employers still value if you feel like you're not able to fill up a whole page with work experience. And you can meet with our office. So our connections page is a great place to, check out all of our resources. And then our office is able to discuss, different job search strategies, internship search strategies, all of those types of things. And, you can make an appointment with our office via handshake. So are there any questions? Oh yeah, Jennifer, go
Hi,
ahead.
Kathy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the important skills. Could you show me how to log in with a LinkedIn Learning? Yeah, I happen to learn some skills like Excel
Yeah.
or some specific skills. Could
Yeah,
you?
so you need to log out of your regular LinkedIn and then you just log in with your Webster email. But if you have trouble logging in with your Webster email, then contacting IT is the best way to kind of troubleshoot any issues. So you just go to LinkedIn Learning. There's also the link, I'll include that in this, it's included in the presentation on how to get there. And so, log out of your personal, log in with your Webster email. And if that doesn't work, you need to check with IT.
Okay, that's a specific website, the Linden Learning, right?
Yeah, and the link to it is, I mean, you can just Google it, but the link is also, it'll be in the presentation that I send out later this week.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
And another question, on the handshake, can we submit a different version resume? Because sometimes we will adjust or focus on the different skills for the specific job. So, can we submit a different resume?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can upload multiple different versions of your resume to Handshake. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you go to apply to a position, you're able to select which one you want to send with your application. And exactly what you're saying you want to be doing. You want to be specializing your resume for each posting you apply for. So it
Mm-hmm.
will probably change throughout your time as you apply.
Okay, so we need to submit the different version resume in advance.
So yeah, so our resume review feature is currently turned on in Handshake. So that is something to keep in mind. We're making sure that it's under 3 pages, that you have your Webster degree on there, that you're not sharing too much personal information, that there are no photos, things like that. Our office typically gets to the resumes that are uploaded within 3 business days or sooner. But if you have a job posting that you'd like to apply to, just keep in mind, don't save it to the last minute because the resume is not released to the employer with your application until our office approves it.
Oh, yes. And sometimes, when I submitted the resume, there's some troubles. Mm,
Mm-hmm.
I need to wait for a few minutes and then it can be submitted.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that might be Handshake just needed a minute, but yeah, keep in mind even if you submit it to an application, if it's not approved in the system, it doesn't get released until it's approved. So if our office sends it back to you and says, "Hey, there are changes recommended," that won't be released until you re-upload until it gets approved. So just keep that in mind as you're applying to positions on Handshake.
Okay. Um, Another question is about what do you prefer to, what do you recommend for us to apply for the job? I mean, which platform is more better?
Yeah,
Handshake or Linden?
so that may depend on your industry. You can use any of the platforms. You can use Handshake, Involve, or LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor. You can use any of those job platforms that you'd like. If there is a specific company that you want to work for, I always recommend going directly to that company website to see what postings they have. Um, Handshake is definitely there, and it's great. It's catered for students. Most of those positions are not asking you to have a ton of prior work experience because employers who opt in to use Handshake know that their audience is students.
Okay.
Employers also know when they post a job, they get to choose who they make it visible to. So they're having to go in and say, yes, we want this visible to Webster University specifically. And so they may make it available to a bunch of different universities, but they understand their audience a little bit better when they use Handshake. So that's why we like it, but you can use, any of the other ones
Okay.
as well.
Okay, get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions today?
Um, a lot of informations I need to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and if there are any outstanding questions or things you want to chat about in more detail, you can always make an appointment with someone in our office. And that's all done on Handshake as well. And we can chat through, maybe your more specific job search strategies relevant to your degree that you're studying, that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay, no
Okay,
more
so
question. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Cassie.
yeah,
I did have a question in regards
sure.
to scheduling an appointment through
Mm-hmm.
Handshake because it's
Yeah,
the first time that I will do it. So
yeah.
just wanted to confirm if I can also, for example, schedule an appointment just to review my current resume.
Yeah, that's a great one. And so we will do that. We can chat with you. All of our appointments can be either virtual or in person. There are some times of days where maybe only virtual is offered because our office doors are locked because we share space with academic advising. But yeah, that is considered the title of a resume review meeting would be application material review because we could look at resumes or cover letters or personal statements. And so that's the type of appointment you would want to make.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, and then if you ever have any questions, you can always, email our office if you're having trouble making an appointment. So I'll put our office email here in the chat in case you need that.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Well, thank you both for being here today. And then I will send these materials out to you by the end of the week. And please feel free to make appointments as you need them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thanks.